the most pictures which I keen to avoid, misrepresentation of Indians has been going on for hundreds of years by Westerners that make it ranging from the missionaries writing about the sexual, immoral, pagan facts of the Hindus, Jews, and the blood actually forcing execution for the 6th and the last of the 20th century. And only through Ginsberg, putting valves and deaths into the house. And the more I actually have been changing for the entry of what's called the devadasi, or being connected or some of the hopeless quickly translate that to find it better. Was to let the people think themselves. Really very simple solution, just like showing the concept of names. And it's not just names, talking about God, God engineering, in the rest of the examples, or studies of Sufis, or gather of them in Jain. And my point is that really one person talking about violence, and each one of them has a different unification, a different way to respect the culture. In both a country, maybe not exactly in the area of different there's no sense that would be not difficult to lab with mixing of this concept, but the guys are the fourth English. They do not believe in the concept of dirty. They do not believe that God resides in the temple and the church or magic. They believe only God matters in the community. And that it's himself of the God in the Mormon knowledge of and there are essentially when they reach, they give up their families in this kind of possession, and they go from world into killing trends, and the philosophy combines Sufism, Vaishnavism, Tantra, Buddhism, all of these religious systems that pass through Bengal. And they encapsulate the different holding things that they use beautifully from. I just need a thought extracts of one of the typical Dalrymple by fellow creating 13 female beauty of the sinless one. With a paradise spent 19 days, beauty must before my eyes, the taste of moons and trees. If I look at the clouds in the sky, I see the beauty of God. I see the milk on the stars, rising within myself. That is a religion, like the stars are a leopard in the sky between the head. Well, certainly the most powerful story in the public story is this tragic tale of the Jain legend for the nation of the 18th book. And the Jains are the most religious of the sects in India. The Buddhist shows their head, Jains protect their head, and by the week of offering prayers. Buddhist monks go begging, Jains they couldn't treat them as a peaceful and so dangerously Buddhist sects. It's very, very severe for religion. And that was really very different. And the reason that they can be escaped. Well, the Jain monks followed something from safety, but realized that it didn't have any more side effects of that. That was their challenge to them, there was an issue. That we seem to be together for 20 years, and not coming and blood questions of these two men who came to community and then the elder of the Quran, Revelation, who decided to go and self-impose literal fasting against it, against being a failure for the nation. You give up everything, then you give up the death, you give up food. The kind of messages that didn't make sense of the story come to sort of upend his samadhi and to sympathize with the truth and truth. And so that they break away in them. And find yourself there again. illiterate with anything people, and you have a realistic attitude of the I think we're going to feel that better than
Welcome back, welcome back. Travel writer William Dalrymple has had his fair share of strange travelling companions, but perhaps never quite as strange as his latest world tour on a bus containing what he calls ganja-smoking tantric madmen from rural Bengal. A collection of singing monks, mystic minstrels, and a part-time god, It's all connected with his new book, 9 Lives in Search of the Sacred in Modern India. And he's with me now. Great to have you with us. What was in fact the part-time god sacred?
Well, the part-time god is, for most of the year, a well builder in the week and a manual labourer and a prison warder in an extremely violent jail in northern Kerala during the weekend. But for 3 months of the year, he becomes a Teyam dancer. This is the ritual dance of northern Kerala. And the Dalit, the untouchable, is transformed into a god. And even the Brahmins, who would normally disdain even to touch him or walk on the same pavement as him, bow down and touch his feet. It's extraordinary. It's like carnival in medieval Europe. All the norms of society are reversed. It's wonderful. It's fantastic.
And what about in your search for mystic India and so on, where did the tantric madman fit into this that we just mentioned?
The search for mystic India, just to sort of put it in context, is very much looking at what is left of that sort of stereotype in the new India. This is an India which is expected to overtake the US in the economy by 2050. And how are these ancient traditions, the Buddhist monks, the Jain nuns, the Sufi saints, and so on, how are they surviving in the new India? And the madmen are the Bauls of Bengal, B-A-U-L-S, which means in Bengali merely the madman, the possessed. And these guys, they're rather wonderful. They have a philosophy which is a mixture of Buddhism, Sufism, Tantra, and they busk in trains and at bus stops and along the roads of rural Bengal in tea shops. And they have these wonderful songs which are a mixture of, I'll read you a short verse, which is probably the best way of sort of conveying the teachings that they have. They busk on the roads, and they make their very profound philosophy accessible to ordinary people just by singing these lovely songs. It goes, typical verse is, "Never plunge in the river of lust, for you will not reach the shore. It is a river without banks, where typhoons rage and the current is strong. Only the masters of the 5 rasas, the juices of love, know the play of the tides. Their boats do not sink. Paddled by oars of love, they row strongly upstream." It's lovely.
Very nice. Did you translate that?
It's not my translation. It's an adaptation of an existing translation.
Yeah. So if there's so much to write about there, are there other places in the world that you dream of seeing?
Well, I've got a kind of patch. I've written a lot about the Middle East too. I did a book called From the Holy Mountain, looking at the remaining Christian monasteries in Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, Turkey, and what was left of the old Eastern Orthodox churches, which is still very strong in some places. In a country like Syria, which Bush would have us believe is the part of the axis of evil, one of the most tolerant, religiously tolerant countries I've ever seen, with scout troops processing through the streets of old Damascus, carrying crosses and singing hymns. Something which is a kind of model of pluralism in that part of the world.
And does all the modern technology and so on change travel writing?
Well, absolutely. This is the subject of the book, really, how these things are surviving. I went looking for a tantric skull feeder. This is a man who takes skulls from the cremation ground and feeds them dal and rice and whiskey with a view to using the spirits. I mean, fantastic Orientalist exotica. But when I talked to this guy and tried to interview him, I'd read about him in an academic paper. He has the largest collection of skulls in Bengal. When I actually found him, I tried to interview him, and he said, "Well, actually, I really shouldn't say anything." And I said, "Why?" You know, I thought there was some veil of secrecy. He said, "No." He said, "My 2 boys are ophthalmologists in New Jersey." They'd tell me, "Dad, you must stop giving these interviews. You're giving us a very bad reputation."
That's a great vision of, oh God,
and that's very much the sort of
he's
thing.
on again.
Well, the Baals too. We had this big concert at the Barbican. 3,500 people turned up. And it had taken almost as long to get these people visas, passports, police clearance, and all the rest of it as it did to actually write the book. And two of them had passports. And just before we went on stage, I said, you know, you travelled before. You two had passports. These are old men with dreadlocks and looking really the part, saffron robes. And they said, yes, it was about 1971. There was some man, what was he called? Mick Jagger got us to come to his housewarming. It was a time of beggars' banquet, and these guys had come over. So the link between the exotic and the extremes of religious mysticism and the globalized India are more intricate than one might imagine.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, William, for that image there. We appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
9 Lives. In Search of the Sacred in Modern India is a travelogue comprised of ethnographic research and personal reflection, written by British journalist William Dalrymple. Dalrymple, an on and off resident of the Indian subcontinent over the course of more than 2 decades, traveled across the country to profile 9 Indians whose lives had been significantly shaped by faith. Published in 2009, this work of non-fiction explores India's religious diversity and questions whether or not the country's spirituality differentiates it from the rest of global society, which he views as largely materialist in nature. The book's first chapter, The Nun's Tale, tells the story of a Jain nun. Jainism is a sect of Buddhism that practices extreme asceticism, non-violence, and detachment from mortal concerns. The nun explains that she had a close friendship over the past 20 years with another nun. Like all practicing Jains, as an expression of devotion, the nuns gave up all their worldly possessions and left their families behind. The second nun, when she was struck by a fatal illness, spent her last days gradually starving herself, another Jain ritual. The nun Dalrymple speaks with believes that her distress following the death of her friend is punishment for having broken the tenets of Jainism in forming an attachment to another person. The second chapter, The Dancer of Kannur, tells the story of Hari Das, who is a Dalit, or a member of the lowest Indian social caste. During the majority of the year, Das works as a well digger and part-time prison warden. However, during the Holi the Yam season, December to February, he performs in a dancing and storytelling ritual during which he becomes possessed by a Hindu god. Dalrymple notes that these rituals are a powerful force for dismantling a discriminatory social class system. Even the Brahmins, member of the highest class, show deference to the Dalit dancers during this time, and the performances often contain elements of social critique which encourage the Brahmins to alter their behavior. The third chapter, The Daughter of Yalama, tells the story of Rani Bai, a devadasi, or young girl who dedicates her life to the service of a deity. Rani, who serves the goddess Yalama, was committed by her parents to the life of a devadasi when she was only 6 years old. The devadasis are part of an ancient tradition, as are the hereditary singers Dalrymple meets in Chapter 4, the singer of epics. Mohan Bopa and his wife, Batasi, are 2 of the only remaining singers of the Epic of Pabuji, a long, medieval poem associated with an Indian folk deity. Chapter 5, The Red Fairy, is the story of Lal Peri, a Sufi Muslim woman who was driven from her home in India, first to Bangladesh and then to Pakistan due to ethnic and religious persecution. While interviewing Lal Peri in the Sindh province, Dalrymple develops a positive impression of the tolerant perspective of the Sufis, and expresses concern of the danger posed to them by the more radical Wahhabi Muslim section. In Chapter 6, The Monk's Tale, Dalrymple relates the story of Tashi Pasang, a Tibetan monk who resides in Dharamsala, the same town where the Dalai Lama resides since his exile from Tibet by the Chinese government. When he fled his hometown in Tibet for India after the Chinese began to oppress Buddhists there, Pasang temporarily gave up his vow of non-violence to defend Tibet and Buddhism. Pasang was trained by India and the CIA but was never given the opportunity to fight for Tibet. Instead, he was a part of a group deployed by the Indian government to defend the newly liberated Bangladesh from Pakistani forces. Now returned to his life as a monk, Pasang claims that the violence he saw is not something a Buddhist should ever be involved in. Chapters 7 and 8, The Maker of Idols, and The Lady Twilight, describe long-standing religious traditions and historical practices. There is Sri Candace Pady, who can trace her lineage back 23 generations to Chola dynasty bronze casters in Tamil Nadu. In West Bengal, in a holy town called Tarapith, Manisha Mabervi worships the goddess Tara. She explains to Dalrymple some of the practices associated with Tantra, including the tradition of drinking from human skulls. The 9th and final chapter, The Song of the Blind Minstrel, tells the story of a group of wandering mystic minstrels from West Bengal. The beliefs of the Baul tradition combine a number of different philosophies and religious sects brought together by this musical tradition. Dalrymple's principal takeaway from his travels in 9 Lives seems to be that beneath the veneer of globalization and growing homogeneity in India, wide diversity of belief persists all over the country. He concludes that there are many possible ways to reach and understand God. The book was widely praised upon its release and received the Asia House Award for Asian Literature in 2010. However, Hirsch Soni, in his review for The Guardian, drew attention to a number of blind spots in Dalrymple's take on Indian religion, such as his failure to address Hindu extremism or Indian Christianity. Soni writes, such gaps are jarring and inexcusable in a serious study of religion in present-day India. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did and be sure to subscribe. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, 9 Lives has been on the India bestseller list for the past 2 months, and we're delighted that William Dalrymple, the director of the Jaipur Literature Festival, has agreed to put this here today. Willie.
Last Jaipur, 2009, when these guys came to the stage, we'd just come back from researching 2 of the chapters of this book, 9 Lives. A book which is intimately bound up with this festival. Many of the people that appear in the pages of this book I met first year. And last November, Paban, Devdas, Kanai, Mimru and I went round Bengal gathering stories for this book, which is a study of the way that religion is changing in a fast developing India. There was one particular story which formed the background to the theme of the book. We were looking for a skull feeder. We'd heard there was a man called Tapan Goswami who lived in a village in West Bengal who had, according to an article I'd read, the largest collection of skulls in Bengal. This guy sounded out of sensual casting. He apparently used these skulls to summon the spirits. Everything the Orientalist in me just sort of, it was perfect sensual casting. So we circled Birbhum looking for this guy. And eventually, about 6 in the evening, we found him in front of a Kali temple. Sun was going down. Debu had known him from years before. And he was about to sacrifice a goat to the goddess. And we asked him, you know, is it true that you collect all these skulls? He said, yes, I've got the best collection in Bengal. And I said, you know, you want to tell me about it? And we started chatting. And after about 20 minutes, he clammed up. And I said, you know, you can tell me, I won't tell anyone. Putting my notebook away. And he said, well, it's not me, he said, it's my 2 boys. They're ophthalmologists in New Jersey. But for that, I'd tell you everything. And the world where a skull feeder can have 2 kids who are ophthalmologists in New Jersey seemed to be an interesting thing to investigate. So this book is a collection of 9 stories, 9 individuals who've been following traditional religious paths that have come into collision with modern India. The first story I'm going to read is the story of these 2 gentlemen over here. Kanai and Debu represent in many ways the 2 different sides of the Bengali village life. Debu on the left here was a Brahmin son. He didn't like the way his father used to make him, wouldn't allow him to bring Muslim boys back home, would have to disinfect his bidis by touching them against cow dung before he would smoke them. And when he met the Bowls, he went off to the Kenduli Mela, which I don't know whether any of you have been to the Kenduli Mela, but it makes the Kumbh Mela look like a kind of Rotary Club dinner. It's a gathering of the greatest gathering of tantric madmen in the world. Just took place last week. 100,000 singing, dancing Bowls gather in Bengal. And Kanai, aged 16, ran away from home to see this. He came back expecting to be in trouble. He'd run away from home to see this. He hadn't expected that his father would beat him about with a lathi and throw him out the house. He went off to Vrindavan, caught a train, threw his sacred thread in the river, and it was on the journey back, on the train back, that he met Kanai. Kanai, on the right, was born to a landless village labourer. He was born with sight, but aged 6 months he got smallpox and has been blind for the rest of his life. But his one great gift is his singing voice, which you'll hear in a minute. And one day, sitting around having a swim in the village pukur, the village fish pond, he began singing, and a Baul guru heard him sing and told his father, Kanai's blind, he won't be able to make his living as a farmer, but if ever any trouble comes to him, he can come and join the Bowls. Years later, his father and his elder brother died in an agricultural accident, leaving Kanai to beg and provide for the rest of the family. Kanai found it was easy enough to beg on a daily basis, but found it impossible to raise the extra money for a dowry for his 2 sisters. And he must have communicated the upset to his sisters, because one day he came back home to find his elder sister had strung herself up from the ceiling beam, like some scene from Jude the Obscure. And reeling from the tragedy of his sister's suicide, he went off to join the Bowls and found a Baul guru. And it was on one day singing that he met Debu, and the two of them have been traveling through Bengal together ever since, singing their songs, explaining the Baul way in a very accessible way with the songs of the mystics of Bengal. And there's only one occasion when the two parted from each other, and I'm going to read you about that time. There was only one time, said Debu, when I left Kanai for an extended period. This is when I became obsessed with trying to live without food, like the saints and yogis of the old stories. These saints controlled their desires, and so never ate. They lived on air alone. I wanted to find out if this was still possible. So I went off on my own, and I found a wood apple tree in a forest near a pond. We believe these trees are very auspicious. I sat there in a loincloth and meditated for 2 years, eating less and less until I stopped eating altogether, taking a vow that no food was to pass my lips until I'd reached my goal. I don't know how I lived. I had matted dreadlocks down to my knees and sat there not eating, not smoking, drinking nothing but water. I focused inwards, conserving my energies, and I sat there like that through 2 monsoons and 2 cold winters. I used to visit him, said Kanai. The villagers knew where he was and would lead me to him through the forest. They called him Bel Tala Babaji, the sadhu who sits under the wood apple tree. He was very thin and very weak. He hardly moved or talked, only very short sentences. I was very anxious that he wouldn't survive, and it pained me that he wouldn't eat. I bought him food, but he refused to eat it. He was very determined. I don't know what I attained by this penance, said Debu, but I know that my mind was at peace as never before. My hair was matted, but the knots of my heart were untied. After a certain point, I stopped feeling hunger. I was at the end of desire, beyond the senses. It was then that I started hallucinating. I was no longer living inside my body. I was somewhere outside of myself, in a state of ecstasy and rapture. I've never felt anything like it, before or since. And then, one cold, starry night, around the time of Makar Sankranti, I felt suddenly lost, as if my mind had detached itself from my body, like a bird flying high. It was Kanai who brought me back. What do you mean? I was unaware of it, but there had been a terrible storm. Kanai had a premonition that I was in trouble and came over from Tarapit to see if I was all right. He arrived early in the morning with a group of villagers and found me up to my neck in a pool of mud, fast asleep. They all thought I was dead, and I suppose I almost was. Kanai brought me back to Tarapit and nursed me back to health. The blind man, said Kanai, saved the man who could see. Sometimes the mad and the sightless can understand things better and more clearly than the sane and the sighted. The blind, said Debu, are never deceived by appearances. Maybe, said Kanai, it is only those of us who have no eyes who can see through the lure of Maya and glimpse reality for what it is. Thank you.
Mostly করুণা গুরু আমায় করো করুণা গুরু যদি আমার সহায় তবে কেন করব হায় হায় তুমি গুরু সকল পায় তোমার পায়ে সকল পায় চরণ ছাড়া করুণা গুরু আমায় করো করুণা গুরু আমায় করো করুণা গুরু আমায় করো করুণা গুরু গতির গতি একাধারে শিব পার্বতী গুরু কৃষ্ণ গুরু শ্রীমতী গুরু কৃষ্ণ গুরু শ্রীমতী গুরুই গঙ্গা যমুনা গুরু আমায় করো করুণা গুরু আমায় করো করুণা গুরু আমায় করো করুণা বাবার গুরু বিশ্বজুনা সে কথা আর কেউ জানে না আমার গুরু বিশ্বজুনা সে কথা আর কেউ জানে না যে জানে সে কথা কয় না যে জানে সে কথা কয় না জড়িয়ে আছে পাদুখানা গুরু আমায় করো করুণা আমি ঢাল তুফানে পেয়ে যাবো ঝড় তুফানে যাবো তোমার দেওয়া দড়ি খানা গুরু আমায় করো করুণা গুরু আমায় করো করুণা গুরু আমায় করো
In the midnight shadows of a forest clearing, bounded on one side by a small stream and a moonlight paddy field, and on the other by the darkness of a rubber plantation and a green canopy of coconut palms, lit only by a bonfire and a carpet of flickering camphor flames. A large crowd has gathered, silhouetted against the flames. Most have walked many miles to get here. Through the darkness, they are waiting and they're watching for the time when, once a year, the gods come down to earth and dance. For 20 minutes, the troop of 6 sweat-glistening, half-naked, dark-skinned Dalit drummers have been raising their tempo. The insistent beats they're rapping out on their goat-hide drums with their small, hard, tamarind wood drumsticks are getting gradually louder and faster and more frenzied. The song telling the myth of the god about to be incarnated has been sung, and in front of the shrine, at the center of the clearing, the first of the dancers has just been possessed, seized by the gods, as they put it. Now he is frenetically pirouetting around the clearing, strutting and jabbing, unsheathed sword in one hand, bow and quiver of arrows in the other. Instinctively, the crowd draws back towards the shadows. Behind the shrine, on the edge of the clearing, there is a palm-thatched hut, and this has been commandeered by the Teyam group as their green room. Inside, the next dancer to go on, a fanged female figure representing the goddess Bhagavati, with a red painted face, supported by a huge red gilt mirrored headdress, is getting ready to summon the deity. The young male dancer, who is about to take in the goddess, has put the final touches to his breastplate and is adjusting the headdress so that the facets flash in the light of the flames. Prostrate on a palm mat amid the discarded clothes, the unused costumes and the half-made headdresses, immobile at the rear of the hut, lies the dark and muscular figure of the man I've come to see. Haridas is one of the most celebrated and articulate Teyam dancers in the area, and he's lying naked but for a white lungi on his back as a young boy applies makeup to his body and face. His torso and upper arms are covered in yellow paint, and his cheeks are smeared with orange turmeric, which gives off a strongly pungent smell. 2 black paisleys are painted around his eyes, and a pair of mango-shaped patches on his cheeks are daubed with bright white rice paste. On these, using a slim strip of coconut, the makeup boy is skillfully drawing loops and walls and scorpion-tailed trumpet spirals, then finishing the effects with a thin white stripe across his cheekbones. I sit down on the mud beside him, and we chat as the makeup boy begins the slow transformation of Haridas into the god Vishnu. I ask whether he's nervous and how the possession comes about. What does it feel like to be taken over by a god? It's difficult to describe, says Haridas. Before it happens, I always feel very tense, even though I've been doing this for 26 years now. It's not that I'm nervous of the god coming. It's more the fear that the god might refuse to come. It is the intensity of your devotion that determines the intensity of the possession. If you lose your feelings of devotion, if it even once becomes routine or unthinking, the gods may stop coming. He pauses as the makeup boy continues to apply face paint. It's like a blinding light, he says eventually. When the drums are playing and your makeup is finished, they hand you a mirror and you look at your face, transformed into that of a god. Then it comes. It is as if there is a sudden explosion of light. A vista of complete brilliance opens up. It blinds the senses. Are you aware what's happening? I ask. No, he replies. The light stays with you all the way during the performance. You become the deity. You lose all fear. Even your voice changes. The god comes alive and takes over. You are just the vehicle, the medium. In the trance, it is the god who speaks. All the acts are the acts of the god. Feeling, thinking, speaking. The dancer is an ordinary man. But this being is divine. Only when the headdress is removed does it end. So what's it like when you come to from the trance, I ask? It's like the incision of a surgeon, he says, making a cutting gesture with his hand. Suddenly, it's all over, it's gone. You don't have any access to what happened during the performance. You can't remember anything that happened. It's just a sensation of relief, as if you've offloaded something. The second dancer is now gazing intently in a small hand mirror at the entrance of the hut. As I watch, the dancer stamps his feet, ringing the bells and the cowrie shells on the anklets. He stamps again, loudly and more abruptly. Then he jerks his body from side to side, as if hit by a sudden electricity current, before stretching out his hands and sinking into a strange, crouching position. His body is quivering, his hands are shaking, and his eyes are flickering from side to side. The figure who had been still, silently staring only seconds earlier, is now transformed, twisting his head in an eerie series of movements that is part tropical fish, part stinging insect, part reptile, part bird of paradise. Then he's gone, bounding into the clearing under the stars, followed by two attendants holding burning splints. Haridas is now getting to his feet and preparing to put on his own costume. I ask, is it a full-time job, becoming a god? No, he replies a little sadly. For 9 months a year, I work as a manual labourer. I build wells during the week. Then at the weekend, I work in Tellicherry Central Jail as a warder. You're a prison warder. I need to make a living. I'm poor enough to be ready to do virtually anything if someone pays me a daily wage. It's not for pleasure. It's very dangerous work. The inmates rule the jail. Many have got political backing. No one dares mess with them. All the prisoners have mobile phones and can order any kind of act from inside prison. The head warder once tried to bring in a jammer to try and stop them, but within the week someone had got to it and poured seawater into it so that it jammed, and that was that. He smiles. I keep my head down. I never beat a prisoner and try to avoid being beaten up myself. I know that if I tried to do the job properly, I would soon be beheaded. I would no longer have a body. Every day, even the superintendent has the same worry. We just try to get through the day alive and intact. And all the tame dancers, I ask, they all lead double lives like this? Of course, said Haridas. Chaumundi over there makes wedding decorations, and Narasimha is a waiter at a hotel. The boy playing Bhagvati is a bus conductor, and Gulagan the destroyer, he nods at another dancer putting makeup on at the back of the hut. He's a toddy tapper. It's his job to pick coconuts from the top of the palm trees and collect the fermented juice. So you're all only part-time gods, I ask. Only during the Tayam season, from December to January. We give up our jobs and become Tayam artists. For those months we become gods. Everything changes. We don't eat meat or fish, and we're forbidden to sleep with our wives. We bring blessings to the villagers and exorcise the evil spirits. We are the vehicle through which people can thank the gods for fulfilling prayers and granting their wishes. Though we are all Dalits, even the most bigoted and casteist Nambudri Brahmins worship us and queue up to touch our feet. his costume is now on, and he picks up a mirror, preparing to summon the deity. For 3 months a year, he says, we are gods. Then in March, when the season ends, we pack away our costumes. And after that, at least in my case, it's back to jail. Thank you.
Beautiful this evening and beautiful atmosphere. Whole atmosphere is very, very beautiful.
Jai Guru. Jai Guru. Jai Guru. Jai Guru. Jai Guru. এদেশেতে কেউ নয় আপনা, এদেশেতে কেউ নয় আপনা, সকলে তোমার চেনা। ধীরে ধীরে বেজা তোরি ধীরে বেন্দনা, ধীরে ধীরে বেজা তোরি ধীরে বেন্দনা। অনন্ত আকাশে আলোটি ভাসে, আর আলোটি ভাসে মৃদু মৃদু পবনে, যাই গে ভেসে আমি জানাই তোমারে, যেতে হবে পারে, বসিয়া থাকিলে বসিয়া থাকিলে চলিবে না। ধীরে ধীরে বেজা তোরি ধীরে বেদনা। কত শত প্রলোভন গ্রাসিতে আসে তোমার দেখো না ভাবিয়া সবে গেল যে চলিয়া গেল যে চলিয়া তোমার তরে কেউ রইল না ধীরে ধীরে বেজা তোরি তীরে এ দেশেতে কেউ নয় আপনার এ দেশেতে কেউ নয় আপনার সকলে তোমার চেনা ধীরে ধীরে বেজা তোরি তীরে বেন্দনা জ্বালা জ্বালাও তরুণী সুন্দর তটিনী জ্বালাও তরুণী সুন্দর তটিনী এখনো বাইলে এখনো বাইলে তোমায় কেউ বাধা দেবে না ধীরে ধীরে বেজা তোরি তীরে বেন্দনা মহায়ানন্দে ভবা ধরিয়া পারে মাঝে আসিয়া তা ভেঙে গেল তরি আমি জানি না সাঁতার কি উপায় আমার আমি জানি না সাঁতার কি উপায় আমার তুমি সমর্থতাও নাই মোর ধীরে ধীরে বেজা তোরি তীরে দাও গো যারতা ভুলে রাখা সয় না তোমার দিল কি দয়া হয় না তোমার দিল কি দয়া হয় না তোমার দিল কি দয়া হয় না সবই দিয়ে যা সব কেড়ে সব দিয়ে যা সব কেড়ে তার তো প্রাণে সয় না তোমার দিল কি দয়া হয় না তোমার দিল কি দয়া হয় না তোমার দিল কি দয়া হয় তোমার দিল কি দয়া এই খেলা ঘর ভাঙবে যদি কেনই বা ঘর বাঁধলে সবাইকে কাঁদালে যত নিজে তত কাঁদে যার মনে বনে লাগে আগুন, মনের বনে লাগে আগুন ফাগুন হাওয়া তার সয় না তোমার দিল কি দয়া হয় না তোমার দিল কি দয়া হয় না তোমার দিল কি দয়া হয় না মোহাম্মদের নাম নিতে নিতে দিন যেন যায় রে দিন যেন যায় সেই দুঃখেতে বন্ধুকে সেই দুঃখেতে বন্ধুকে কবরে শুয়াই তুমি যেন আহা তুমি যেন তোমার দিল কি দয়া হয় না তোমার দিল কি দয়া হয় না তোমার দিল কি দয়া হয় না তোমার দিল কি দয়া তোমার দিল কি দয়া হয় না তোমার দিল কি দয়া I doesn't listen any my dutara my stage. This is totally because no sound. Everybody sound, but my I doesn't just sound here, just like this. But I doesn't listen anything. It's my sound. I doesn't know. Go for it. This is nice. করেছিল কি এখন एसेठी है थाई तुम्हारी आगा तुम्हारी आगा आदेश करिबा मात्र जाबो चलिया परमे 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 জানিয়া পরমে পদ জানিয়া ক্রোধে লোভে মোহে ডরি না কভু আমি যে দাস দাস তুমি যে প্রভু কাম ক্রোধ মোহে ডরি না কভু আমি যে দাস দাস তুমি যে প্রভু কারণ কারণ তোমারি সৃজন আশ্চর্য হয় না প্রভু আশ্চর্য হয় না প্রভু ভীষণ দেখিয়া পরমে 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 জানিয়া পরমে পরমে তুমি পাপ তুমি পুণ্য সকলে তোমারই দান আসন্ন পাতিয়া আছো এ মহা মানব প্রাণ করিচ্ছ এই পুতুল খেলা হাসে তাই ভবা পাগলা চূড়ান্ত জ্বালা চূড়ান্ত জ্বালা তুমি আছো যে মিশিয়া পরমে পরমে এসেছি হে তাই তোমারি আজ্ঞায় আশ্চর্য হয় না তবু আদেশ পাইবার মাত্র যাব চলিয়া পরমে পরমানিয়া
Tapan Das Paul and the Pauls of Bengal.
Thank you. Now is Susila and Sam is coming. After some song, we are joined and we are jam. Okay. And where is Sanjay?
3 years ago, 2 years ago, Shushila and Sam came to the Jaipur Literary Festival for the first time. Shushila had burst into the world music scene in 2002 with her album Salt Rain, which was shortlisted for the Mercury Music Prize. EMI, that was her label, wanted her to go straight back into the recording studios and record a second album. Instead, she did something very unusual. She went to a small village in Tamil Nadu and she trained in the traditional methods of Tevaram hymn singing. Tevaram hymns date back to the 6th and 7th centuries. They're some of the finest works of Tamil poetry. But today, the ancient techniques of singing them are dying out. Even a generation or two ago, every well-educated Tamil woman would know the Tevaram hymns by heart. But today, it's an art that's dying out. The different gharanas that teach the Tevaram hymns are dwindling, and Shushila has gone back to the roots to learn these. The last reading I'm going to do tonight, before Shushila and Sam came on, talks about a different institution of the Tamil temples, one that today is seen in a very ambiguous light. This is the tradition of the devadasis. All over the ancient world, in Rome, in Egypt, in Mesopotamia, the tradition of temple prostitution was common. The only place that it survives today is in Karnataka, in Tamil Nadu, and in Andhra Pradesh. In the Middle Ages, the devadasis were from the very highest echelons of South Indian society. Tamil Chola princesses joined the ranks of the devadasis. They were the only educated women in the south. They wrote poetry. They controlled chariots and fleets of servants. The Tamil temples are filled with inscriptions of the dedications and the gifts left to the temples by the devadasis. But successive waves of colonial and post-colonial legislation has tried to outlaw the institution and has not succeeded in ending it. There are still possibly 1 million devadasis left, but today it is demeaned and made illegal. It exists underground. The devadasis have to pay off the priests, and today only the very poorest become devadasis. 2 years ago, I went to Belgaum and interviewed some of the last remaining devadasis, including 2 women called Rani Bai and her friend Kavri. Of course, there are times when there is pleasure, said Rani Bai. Who does not like to make love? A young, handsome man, one who is gentle. She paused for a moment, looking out over the lake, smiling to herself. Then her face clouded over. But mostly, she said, it is horrible. The farmers here, they are not like the boys of Bombay. And 8 of them every day, said her friend Kaveri. Sometimes 10. Unknown people. What kind of life is that? We have a song, said Rani. Everyone sleeps with us, but no one marries us. Many embrace us, but no one protects. Every day, my children ask, Who is my father? They do not like having a mother who is in this business. Once I tried to open a bank account for my son, said Rani. We went to fill in the form and the manager said, father's name? After that, my son was angry. He said, I should not have brought him into the world like this. We are sorry we have to do this work, but what is the alternative? Who will give us jobs? We are all illiterate. And the future, said Kaveri. What do we have to look forward to? When we are not beautiful, when our bodies become ugly, then we will be all alone. If we live long enough to be old and ugly, said Kaveri. So many are dying. One of our community died last week. 2 others last month. In my village, 4 younger girls have died. My own brother has the disease. He used to be a truck driver and knew all the girls along the roads. Now he just lies at home drinking, saying, what difference does it make? I will die anyway. She turned to face me. He drinks anything he can get, she said. If anyone told him his urine had alcohol in it, he would drink that too. That can't be easy to live with, I said. Kaveri laughed harshly. If I were to sit under a tree and tell you all the sadness we have to suffer, the leaves of that tree would fall like tears. My brother is totally bedridden now. He has fevers and diarrhea. He used to be such a handsome man, with a fine face and large eyes. Now, those eyes are closed, and his face is covered in boils and lesions. Yelama never wanted it to be like this, said Rani. The goddess is sitting silently, said Kaveri. We don't know what feeling she has about us. We don't know what she is thinking. No, said Rani, firmly shaking her head. The goddess looks after us. When we are in distress, she comes to us. Sometimes in our dreams, sometimes in the form of one of her children. It is not the goddess's doing. The world has made it like this. The world and the disease. The goddess dries our tears, said Rani. If you come to her with a pure heart, she will take away your sadness and your sorrows. What more can she do? I spent a week with these girls, and at the very end, Kaveri and Rani finally took me to the place where they worked. We arrived at her door now. You see, she said, we live as a community, and this gives us protection. If any client tries to burn us with a cigarette or tries to force himself upon us without wearing a condom, we can shout and everyone will come running. Inside the house, in contrast to the filth of the streets outside, everything was immaculately clean. The space inside was divided in 2 by a large cupboard. The front half of the room was dominated by a large bed where Rani plied her trade. To one side, on a shelf, were several calendar pictures of the goddess. The back half of the room was a second bed, the one Rani slept in. Here were all her beautifully clean pots and pans, stacked neatly in racks. On top was a cupboard and a large mirror, and Rani's family photographs, a picture of her son and her old boyfriend, a handsome man with a Bollywood film star moustache and dark glasses. Beside that were small passport-sized shots of her 2 dead daughters, Both were pretty girls, shot smiling when they were around 12 or 13, full of hope and youth. Rani took the photographs from my hand and replaced them on the cupboard. Then she led me back to the front of the room and indicated that I should sit on the bed. Perhaps prompted by the association, I asked whether her auspicious status had any difference when her clients came here to be entertained. No, she said, there are no devotional feelings in bed. Fucking is fucking. There I'm just another woman, just another whore. And do you feel safe from the disease here, I asked. Are you confident that the condoms can protect you? No, she said, there is always fear. We know that even if you persuade all your clients to wear a condom, one broken one can infect us. And once you are infected, there is no cure. We will die. If not today, then tomorrow. She paused. You see, I know what it's like. I watched both my daughters die, as well as at least 6 of my friends. I nursed many of them. Some lost their hair. Some had skin diseases. 1 or 2 of the most beautiful became so repulsive that even I did not want to touch them. She shivered almost imperceptibly. Of course, we feel scared, she said, but we must continue our work if we are to eat. We have a lot of misery to bear, but that is our tradition. That is our karma. We try to show our happy side to our clients, to keep attracting them, and put all our efforts into doing a good job. So do you have any hopes for the future, I said. I am saving, she replied. As I told you, I bought a little land, and one day I hope that if I can get some more buffaloes and goats maybe, I can save enough to retire and live by selling the milk and the curds. Yelama will look after me. You know that? Of course. If it wasn't for her, how could an illiterate woman like me earn 2,000 rupees a day? Yelama is a very practical goddess. I feel she is near. She is with us in good times and in bad. We parted soon after that, and I drove back to Belgaum. Later, one of the project managers of the NGO working with devadasis and AIDS, I asked them how their families reacted to infection. It's terrible, said the woman from the NGO. The families are happy to live off them and use the money they earn. But as soon as they become infected, or at least become bedridden or sick, they are just dumped in a ditch. Sometimes literally so, just abandoned. We had a case before Christmas with one girl. She was taken to a private hospital in Jaipur after she complained of headaches. The hospital ran some tests and found she was HIV positive. And on top of that, she had a brain tumor. She began treatment, but her family checked her out because of the expense and took her home. When we tried to find her, the family gave conflicting accounts of where she was. Different family members said she was in different hospitals. In fact, she'd been taken home, thrown in a corner, and left to starve to death. We found her in a semi-conscious state, completely untended by the same family members she had been supporting for years. She wasn't even being given water. We took her straight back to the hospital ourselves, but it was too late. She died 2 weeks later. Then it's a good job Rani will be retiring before long, I said. Is that what she told you? She said she'd get some land and some buffaloes and try to make a living from that. Rani Bai? Yes. Well, I shouldn't really be telling you this, said the woman from the NGO, but Rani's infected. She's been HIV positive for 18 months now. I've seen the tests. Does she know this? Of course. It's not full-blown AIDS, at least not yet. The medicines can delay the onset of the worst symptoms, but they can't cure her. Either way, it's highly unlikely she'll ever retire to that farm. It's the same as her daughters. It's too late to save her.
We're sitting with William Dalrymple, and this is the next installment of 5 Minutes Alone. William, thank you for joining us. First question for you this evening. Who or what do you read?
Well, like most non-fiction writers, I think when I'm in a book, I read exclusively around the subject, and there's a period of a couple of years when I except on holiday, I probably don't read anything at all except the book I'm writing. Great writers, the writers who I love most, among travel writers, Robert Byron, Bruce Chatwin, Patrick Lee Fermor. Among historians, Stephen Runciman, Simon Sharma. Among novelists and short story writers, Hemingway, Truman Capote, Tolstoy, Turgenev, Flaubert.
In terms of the characters that you've created, the subject matters that you've written about, to which are you most attached?
Like I find with child rearing, the most recent one, I find that I favoritize always the most recent book and the most recent set of characters. So I suppose my most recent book is 9 Lives, and the characters I'm currently most attached to are Kanai Dasbal, who's this wonderful blind tantric minstrel who wanders the roads of India, or my Jain nun, who is currently starving herself to death, Prasanna Matamataji. But being a fickle writer, I will soon be embracing with equal enthusiasm Dost Muhammad Khan, the Emir of Afghanistan in 1830, which is the book I'm writing at the moment, and his rival Shah Shuja.
What was the best advice you were ever given as a writer?
That's an easy question. By Bruce Chatwin, before I'd even written my first book, I remember him telling me, never, ever hand in any piece of work that has to go between hardcovers, which you are not completely satisfied with. It's different with journalism. Journalism, you can shove stuff out, you can churn out reviews, you can do op-eds. You shouldn't do it that much if you want to be a serious writer, but you can do it. But with serious literature, which is to be behind hardcovers, which will go into libraries around the world, which will remain with your name on its spine for the rest of your life and hopefully for some time after. Never publish anything unless you're completely satisfied with it, even if you have to sell your possessions, mortgage your wife, sell your children. Do what you have to do, but make sure you never publish anything that's not as good as it can possibly be.
In terms of your writing process, are you someone who flies by the seat of their pants, or are you a strict outliner?
I have a process which I suppose is akin to Chinese cookery, which is that I'm a very slow and meticulous researcher and outliner, and will spend, I have a cycle of about 4 years with my books, and so will often spend as much as the first 3 doing the equivalent to chopping up the veg. I will be researching, writing date lines, plans, thinking how to do the introduction and the structure and mulling over it. It comes in fits and starts. It comes during walks and baths and showers and odd moments when you're relaxed. Suddenly it'll come together. Walks on beaches, I find, are often inspirational light bulb moments. Suddenly if you're on a beach and going 5 miles, you're barefoot and you've got nothing, you haven't got your BlackBerry and anything to distract you. Suddenly everything will fall into place towards the end of the process. And in fact, 3 or 4 of my books have been effectively born on the same beach in Goa. You do a long walk that takes 2 hours, and by the end it's kind of there, and you write it down before you go. But in terms of writing, I do it like Chinese cookery again, intensively, and I suppose the seat of the pants thing comes in there, because what happens. I clear 6 months. I don't go out, I don't go to parties, I certainly don't go to literary festivals or holidays or anything that distracts. and I really just clear a block of time and intensively live in the book. And while all the research is done anally and fixatedly and slowly, the writing often goes off. Although I write non-fiction, I don't write novels, nonetheless the writing can easily go off in strange directions if it's working.
One final question. Could you share with us one thing about yourself that is not widely known?
I was a Catholic choir boy at the age of 12. But don't read anything Irish into that.
All right, we won't. We'll just leave it at that. Thank you for taking the time to spend with us.
Said it.
The one that makes me laugh, he said, and threw his arms around my neck. Show me how you do it, and I promise that I'll run away with you. I'll run